He was one of the most multi-talented artists of the 20th century. Today we're marking 50 years since the death of French poet, painter, filmmaker and dramatist Jean Cocteau. Joining me in the studio is actress and director Arielle Dombasle, whose film Opium pays tribute to Jean Cocteau. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Now I'm going to start with a very big question.
Yeah.
How would you sum up Jean Cocteau and his work?
Well, the thing is that Jean Cocteau is a master for all the artists, I think. He had that eclecticism that is very difficult in a very long career, and he touched up with so brilliantly to so many vehicles, as he used to call them, poetry and cinema, and he adored musical and music and poetry and drawings, and it's that multicard actor of life, of his life, that give you the strength of become what you really are.
With more than 50 books, 24 plays and musicals, a dozen films, countless designs, paintings, drawings, varied works of art and even a postage stamp, much of the French artist is indeed still with us. Claire Murphy looks back at his life.
A man of many talents, Jean Cocteau is considered one of the most versatile artists of the 20th century. Born in 1889 to a wealthy family just outside Paris, he began writing at 10 and was a published poet by 16. Cocteau's love of words led him to become a successful novelist and playwright, but he also excelled as an actor, painter, designer, filmmaker and illustrator.
He was a poet, of course, but he was a poet of many genres. A poet of drawing, of cinema, of theatre. He was talented in so many ways. That's why he's still relevant.
This villa in Saint-Jean-Cap-Ferret, where he spent much of his last decade, just one example of how Cocteau couldn't help but leave his mark. Further up the coast, the town of Menton was won over by his creativity and claimed Cocteau as their own.
Here in Menton, he adapted a new graphic style, which we see in this marriage hall. It's called the Menton style, in an arabesque style, that's only used here.
A new Cocteau museum opened in Menton in 2011. Visitors can explore many of his countless artworks, books, plays, and of course his films.
He thought that poetry lost its intensity when it was translated. So films where the visual was more important than the dialogue allowed him to transcend that problem without the need for translation.
Debuting as a director in 1925, his most notable films, the Orphic trilogy, and his bringing to life of French fairy tale Beauty and the Beast.
Voulez-vous être ma femme? Non, la bête.
Cocteau collaborated on many of his productions with longtime partner, the actor Jean Marais. His friends included artists Picasso and Matisse, writers like Proust and singer Edith Piaf, who he died soon after. His gravestone declaring, "Je reste avec vous," I remain with you.
Well, in the gardens of the Palais Royal at the Cinémathèque Française Film Centre in the Museum of Letters and Manuscripts, on our screens and in our bookshops, this month Paris is filled with Jean Cocteau. Arielle Dombasle's film Opium is out in cinemas in France now. Now, tell us about the tribute that you wanted to make to him through this film.
Well, I didn't want to make a biopic. I didn't want to talk about his entire life. So I picked up those extraordinary roaring years of the 20s, where all the forms of art were crossing themselves. And Cocteau used to say, I walk with my hands open. He was so generous towards all the artists of his epoch, and he kept on that philosophy all his life. And that's why I adore about him, is that he made rise creation around him. To make my movie, I tried to take that period where he's rather young, he's in the south of France, Hotel Welcome, and he's very much in love with Raymond Radiguet, a wonderful author that died at the age of 20 and that Cocteau met at the age of 14. And so I made to pay tribute to that master through music. So all my movie is based on text of Jean Cocteau and of the intoxication of love, disintoxication, and of opium. That was his field too. Cocteau was a very big opium man, and that is very important. Opium is an extraordinary plant, and we will all use opium once in our life, because opium is morphine, and morphine is the only anti-pain that we have. And Cocteau, he gives you the strength of the vulnerability of the being, of the strength of creations that you have inside of you, and you have to dare to do things with people of your epocha, with friends, artists, and do things without, be disobedient. And that is a wonderful tribute.
Okay, well, Arielle, we'll come back to talking about it in a moment, but first of all, let's have a look at a clip from the film.
Yes.
The film does focus on his love affair. I mean, he was openly gay at the time. Was that quite shocking?
It was shocking at that time, and I think later with Jean Marais, he was really the first couple who really imposed the idea that two men can create and be together and in love. But he was really the very first one. But with Radiguet, which is interesting, is that Radiguet wasn't gay. He liked women, but they had a tremendous love affair, a love affair that brought literature. And that's what I wanted to show, that extremely intimate relation that makes art happen.
And he was very eclectic, very prolific. I mean, he made films, he wrote poetry, he did painting. And as an artist, I mean, you're pretty prolific as well, and eclectic. You, like
Yes.
an actress, a singer, a director. Is that something that's quite easy to be in France, to do lots of different things? Because in lots of
No.
other cultures, it's not, is it?
No, it's not. It's always extremely difficult, and people want to pin you down always in a sort of caricature of yourself and want you to be always the same person, and we all, the artists, suffer of that, you know. Sometimes when you make a hit on a movie or on musical field, they always want to pin you down to that hit. An artist should be free. And I always tried in my life to do that, and I achieved it. And it's a lot thanks to the master Jean Cocteau.
What would you say that he represents then for France and for the French, for the rest of the world, Jean Cocteau?
I think his image was so strong as someone who knew how to talk so fluently and so brilliant, that sometimes that hold his art back. He's a very big director. For instance, Le Sang d'un Poète was really the first surrealistic movie ever. And then the surrealists were jealous about him. He always had to fight to be understood by his epocha. But I guess all the artists are on that situation.
All the geniuses. And the French actually call cinema the seventh art.
Yes.
And at times in his eclectic career, it seemed that Jean Cocteau was actually juggling all seven at once. But it's through film that he's mainly known in the rest of the world. Among the numerous events for the 50th anniversary, Paris's Cinémathèque Française is bringing together Cocteau's films for a retrospective. There'll also be an exhibition of memorabilia, portraits, private letters, original costumes in the Cinémathèque's museum until November. And at Paris's Museum of Letters and Manuscripts, 150 of his works, drawings, notes and photographs are on show. They include the original script for his film Beauty and the Beast, which is considered to be a national treasure. And notes he made on the filming and photos of the shoot are there too. Here's the curator of the exhibition, Pascal Foulaché.
We have a lot of letters he wrote, including correspondence between him and his lover Jean Marais during the Second World War. Jean Marais was sent to fight while Cocteau stayed in Paris, so they wrote to each other a lot. There are about 50 letters, each as interesting as the rest. Cocteau writes about his feelings for Jean Marais, of course, but he also writes about his works.
And that exhibition is on until the 23rd of February at Paris's Museum of Letters and Manuscripts. Now, that brings us to the end of the show. Arielle Dombasle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be under the protection of the marvellous Ange Heurtebise, that is Cocteau.
Oh, thank you for coming. Well, Arielle's film Opium is out in cinemas in France now, so you've got a chance to come and see it if you're in the country. Now, the movie screen, Cocteau said, is the true mirror reflecting the flesh and blood of my dreams. And one of his most poetic, dreamlike films was Beauty and the Beast. The 1946 fairy tale has just been digitally restored, and we're going to leave you with that. Remember, you can follow us on our social networks and me on Twitter at Eveling in Paris. Thanks for watching. See you next time.